Project Hail Mary is one of those movies that you need to go see in a theater. Thank you for joining me for this review, and if you're someone who loves to discuss and review movies or rank things from worst to best, you've come to the right place. And if you enjoy this video, I really hope that you subscribe to the channel and like this video. It really helps the channel grow. I also hope that you follow Popcorn Heist on Instagram, where we have reels and trivia on Tuesdays and polls on Saturday. I know I'm a little bit late here, but I finally got a chance to see Project Hail Mary in the theater. And I definitely wanted to talk about it because it was a really unique theatrical experience, and there was just a lot of elements that I really wanted to talk about. So from this point forward, full spoilers for Project Hail Mary. But before we get into the review, at Popcorn Heist, I choose a quote per video. And the quote of today's video is, "You are the bravest human I've ever met," which is said by Rocky to Ryan Gosling's character, Grace. At first, this quote didn't really stand out to me, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt like this touched on a lot of the aspects that I enjoyed from the film and a lot of the themes I enjoyed from the film. It's kind of a funny moment that speaks to the relationship between Rocky and Grace, and that's really the heart of the movie. And at the same time, it's a funny moment, but it's also a heartfelt moment between the two, where it really shows the affection and respect that Rocky has for Grace. And it also touches on the theme of bravery that's prevalent throughout the movie, and what makes a person brave, and is someone willing to sacrifice himself, and is that what makes them brave? So although it's a simple quote and a quick quote that you might not notice as an important quote at first glance, I really just felt like it incorporated a lot of what I love from the movie in one line. So moving on to the review, Project Hail Mary is essentially about, as many space movies are, the Earth dying, but in this case, it's a little bit of a twist where it's not the Earth itself dying, it's actually the sun that is being consumed by organisms that are slowly taking the power from the sun and therefore eventually going to make Earth uninhabitable for humans. So Ryan Gosling's character, Grace, who is actually an elementary school science teacher, is brought into the fold to help solve this issue and is sent on a space mission to go to a different sun and figure out why that sun is not being consumed by the organism. He runs into an alien who is on the same mission to save their own planet, and kind of starts a relationship and a friendship with this alien as they both work to save their respective planets. Project Hail Mary is based off of a book, and I have not read that book, and I actually came into this movie knowing very little about what happens in its plot, aside from it was a space movie and Ryan Gosling has some sort of friendship with an alien, so I came in almost as a blank slate. I feel like it can be easy for a space movie to fall into the same tropes as the space movies that came before it, and there are some of those in here that I feel like the movie used pretty well and wasn't too heavy-handed. For example, the video diaries and the sequences where the spaceship is spinning out of control and the character is trying to stop it, and the kind of setting where the Earth is dying, again, with a little bit of a twist in this movie. So it has all those things that are necessary for a space movie, but I feel like it does do a pretty good job of paving its own path. I feel like this is the first space movie that I've seen as an adult that's made for adults that really has a friendly alien. I feel like that's not usual in a space movie. Usually there's no aliens at all and they're just traveling to other planets, or there's an alien who is hostile to the main characters. I also loved the structure of this movie where Grace wakes up with amnesia on the spaceship, and the first scene is on the spaceship, and you're kind of learning what's going on Earth and what was going on in his life before he went on the space mission as the character is learning it. And I thought that was a cool way to experience the movie as the viewer, where you're kind of learning the same information as the main character. And I felt like those sequences really were incorporated well and kind of broke up the structure of the movie, because you had the more intense scenes in space paired with flashbacks to Earth that were more full of exposition and reveals from Grace's life prior to the space mission. And I feel like when a movie is split between two stories like that, you can kind of feel like you're sitting in traffic for one of them and want to flip back to the other. But I didn't feel that way in this movie because I felt like each storyline kind of gave you different things that made this overall story. I would say one very minor complaint about the flashbacks is I do wish they touched on a little bit more of Grace's life before he got brought into helping with the science of this mission, and a little bit more of his relationship with his classroom and the reason why he was such a loner, especially when this character is clearly very charismatic, clearly very charming, clearly interacts with other characters, including an alien later on. This movie also does a great job balancing comedy with really intense moments and really heartfelt moments, and I feel like that's especially true with the relationship between Grace and Rocky, the alien, because it really does feed you some really comedic moments, especially as they're getting to know each other. And I really love the sequence where they're trying to communicate with each other even though they can't speak the same language. I'm glad we kind of spent our time with that sequence, and you really buy the relationship between these characters and really love the comedic moments with them and believe the heartfelt moments with them, which leads to this really great balance of comedy and intensity and heartfelt moments that's really sold by the relationship between these characters. And you really feel for these characters when they're in danger and you're scared that something's gonna happen to them. And I mean, kudos to Ryan Gosling for being able to sell both the comedic and the intense / heartfelt moments and sell the relationship between him and an alien rock. And he's able to create a really brave, heroic character over the course of the movie in the space sequences, but you really also believe him in his more human moments, especially in the flashback sequences. And I really loved the twist at the end of the flashback sequences where they reveal that Ryan Gosling's character didn't actually choose to go on the mission and was forced to go on the mission. I feel like that was really unexpected in my opinion, and the whole movie, you're obviously wondering how Ryan Gosling ended up on this mission. Clearly, he's on the spaceship, and the flashbacks happen before he's even part of the team that's going to be in space. So you're wondering the whole time how it's going to happen that he ends up being one of the three who's chosen on this mission. I expected him to stand up and be brave, and I feel like him just refusing to go on the ship and having to be forced to, I don't know, I felt like that really made him a human character and also added a lot of depth and complexity to, I think her name was Eva, in that she had to make this decision for the good of Earth, but she's clearly betraying someone she's been getting close to over the last few months and basically, in her mind, sentencing him to death. So it's a haunting moment. It was a great twist. It really worked for me. I don't know that I've ever experienced a twist like that where it occurs at the end of flashback sequences, but the flashback sequences are scattered throughout the movie. So it's also at the end of the movie, and it really changes your understanding of all of these characters that you've been seeing on screen throughout the entire runtime. So yeah, I just thought it was really original and inventive and really worked for me. I was really surprised by it, which is really the point of a twist like that. The movie is a little bit over 2.5 hours long, so it is on the longer side, and you do feel that runtime. I wouldn't say in a negative way, more so because there are multiple climaxes and multiple very intense moments, both in the space sequences and on Earth. So there's multiple moments where you're like, oh, this has to be it. This has to be the final sequence. And then it continues and continues and continues. So you get a lot out of it in its runtime. You do feel it a little bit, but I personally felt like it was deserved and all of the moments made sense, and the continuation of the story just continued to make sense and build on the decisions that each character was making. This movie is also gorgeous, some really beautiful shots of space, and honestly some really hauntingly beautiful shots. The shot when Grace is airlocking the bodies of the other astronauts out and kind of giving them a funeral, and they're going off into the vacuum of space. That was a really hauntingly beautiful moment. And the scene where Grace is trying to get the sample from the planet Adrian and he's like dealing with all these different things going wrong on the ship, but it's showing these beautiful shots of the aurora borealis, I guess, of that planet, and the different lights and the atmosphere of that planet. It's just made for some really beautiful shots during some really intense moments, and an amazing score throughout the movie, playing over some of these beautiful shots, really just made for some amazing moments and really just enhanced the intensity. And that's really why I think people should try to go see this in a theater if they can. It really was a great theatrical experience. The beautiful shots, the amazing music, and the really great sound design all just made for a really beautiful movie. And I would try to see it in an IMAX theater or in a Dolby theater if you can. Personally, I saw it in a Dolby theater, and the sound definitely helped build the intensity. In that sequence over Adrian, my heart was like pounding. I was like grabbing my chair and bracing for impact during that scene. And that's how you know a scene is effective, when you're really like feeling the intensity that the scene is trying to convey. I really only have very minor critiques for this movie. I will say at sometimes the way they explain some of the science and some of the situations as a whole, as a viewer, you're sometimes a little bit confused about what has to happen and what the resolution actually has to be. For example, I feel like at the beginning of the movie, they kind of explain that it's like 100 years back to Earth, and they don't really explain that that is without astrophage. So I spent a lot of the movie not really realizing that they needed astrophage to get back to Earth, and they could get back at all. And at times when the ship is like spinning out of control and either Grace or Rocky has to grab something or push something, at times I was a little bit unsure exactly what they were doing or what they had to do to get out of the situation. And with the theme of bravery and sacrifice and sacrificing oneself to save others, I was really expecting either Rocky or Grace, and kind of switched between which one I was expecting to sacrifice themselves at different points. I do feel like there was a lot of times where you either thought one was about to die or you thought one was dead, and they kind of backtrack on that, so there isn't like a final sacrifice at the end. And personally, I like a character sacrifice when they sacrifice themselves for the greater good. So for me, I was kind of expecting, and I don't want to say hoping for that because I did love both characters so much, but I feel it would have been impactful. I don't dislike the ending. I just think a sacrifice also would have been impactful and fed into some of the themes of the movie. But I did like the ending. I thought it was kind of cool and fed into the wacky and more unbelievable nature of the movie, that Grace was able to go and live on Rocky's planet and kind of make his own decision of whether or not he's going to return to Earth. And I like that they didn't answer that question and kind of left it open-ended, because I don't think you really need to know. It's nice to know he can get back to Earth if he wants to, but everyone he knows will be either really old or dead by the time he gets back. So you almost don't have a preference over if he's going to stay with Rocky or if he's going to go back to Earth. And I'm kind of glad that they didn't answer that. And he's also able to have a moment where he proves that he does actually love the students and love teaching, and does still pursue teaching to some of Rocky's species. And I hope he's teaching like human and Earth science and educating Rocky's species on what goes on Earth. So by no means do I think it's a bad ending in any sense. I just like a sacrifice, especially in a movie that does focus a lot on bravery and sacrificing yourself for the greater good. But again, those are very minor critiques, and I loved a lot about this movie. I would recommend going to see it in the theaters for sure. I would give it a 4.5 out of 5 popcorn buckets. It's my favorite movie of 2026 so far. And I just thought it did a lot of inventive things and did a lot to take a lot of what's needed to make the typical space and sci-fi movie great, but still pave its own way and do some original and inventive things, and have some beautiful and really intense sequences throughout its runtime. Thank you for joining me for this review, and if you enjoy this video, I really hope that you like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow. And join me for future reviews and more movie and TV content.